Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Club Grubbery. Johnny, you got your Kelly t-shirt on today, mate. What's that in honour of? Aid of?
Oh, no, I just thought I'd give it a run, Hoodie. We haven't spoken with Brad from the Cali for a while, and I was thinking about him. And I thought it'd be good just to remind people to head up there and get a counter lunch and have a beer.
Yeah, good idea. The Kelly Hotel in Singleton, great place to be. And that wasn't a paid sponsored announcement either. It's just we just love the work that the Kelly do, and they have done for a long time.
Mm.
And our special guest today is no stranger to podcasts, and that's George Kesic. How are you, George?
I'm great, thanks, honey. How are you?
I know you're great, but how are you?
Nice. I'm feeling great, thank you, as well as being great.
That's really good, mate. We'll touch off on a couple of issues before we go to the main reason we got you on, which is great work you're doing. You're getting the nickname of the Pharmacy Whisperer, and well deserved. But John, there's some strange stuff going on in Victoria. Over the weekend, 3AW put out a story about a 14-year-old boy who was part of a gang that raided a 7-Eleven with machetes. The police managed to capture him, and he went before the courts. He was out on bail already for other offences. And even though he was caught right to left and the police opposed bail, the judge gave him bail again. The magistrate, what on earth is going on in the state of Victoria? We must be scratching our heads.
There are no words for that, Hoodie. This whole thing about the machetes has just been another stunt. But here we have somebody caught red-handed with one of these implements that's been banned across Victoria, and I don't think there's been any handed in, has there? I don't think it's been a raging success, but clearly they're still on the streets. But the magistrates are happy with that.
Well, George, you've got to ask what it says about the state of Victoria. I mean, they're happy. They're happy to. The government is happy to get the police to fire rubber bullets on peaceful protesters who were protesting, had every right to be out there protesting, especially the parlous state of Victorian government was at that stage and still is. I don't think it's any better. It's getting worse. And here the police are asked to do all these rotten things, and stupidly they did them. And then when they need support in getting these gangs sorted out, the magistrates pull this sort of a stunt. I mean, you've got to wonder, haven't you?
Well, look, you can't do anything you don't want to hurt the feelings, do you? So you can't actually arrest them and put them away. No, that'd be nobody would have that. And look, the bins, it was a flawed idea. The only flawed bit about the bin is the fact they've got the bins at the police stations. So I mean, that's putting people off, obviously, because there might actually be a cop there, probably asleep, because they're all off somewhere else, probably arresting people, putting stuff online. But if you've got the bin there and you drop your blood-soaked machete off, you might get spotted and arrested. So they can't have that. I think they should have put them down, like the defibs. They should have put them everywhere down the street. Then there's more chance of handing them in.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The defibs, they're everywhere, aren't they? And of course, everyone knows how to use a defib, don't they?
Well, look, even if you don't, well, in the UK now, to get your driving license, you've got to prove you know how to use a defib, how to use one. It's in the actual written paper now.
Oh, yeah.
So, which is scary, isn't it, when you think about it? But look, the defibs as well. I found out the other day, I was with a mate of mine. We were in DY, and there was a defib at the side of the road. And he said, they're all locked. And I said, what? He said, yeah, you've actually got to ring up to get someone to come and open it for you. I said, well, how does that work? Supposing you're just dropping dead there and somebody wants to open it, they've got to ring for the ambulance to come with the key to open it. I don't know how that works.
Unbelievable.
I know, John. Tell me about it.
What could possibly go wrong, Johnny Larder, former paramedic of 25 years?
They're in police car. I mean, isn't it ridiculous? I mean, here we've got a case in the UK where you've got to have proved that you can use one of these to get a driver's license. But in New South Wales, there was one in every general duties police car, but I think they were going to remove them because the police said it wasn't their core business. So, I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. Really, it's just ridiculous.
Core business.
But I've got a new idea. This came to me yesterday. it could be a bit of a money spinner, actually. There was an attack, I think it was New South Wales. There was a delivery driver knocked off his bike and he was stabbed, it says, over 12 times. I'm assuming 13, but it says more than 12 with a screwdriver. So that means they're going to be banning screwdrivers soon. Right? So I thought we could have a screwdriver bin. And I'd instigate that, and I get a grant from the government. I won't spend 325,000 per bin. That's a bit excessive. 250,000, I thought, for each bin, and we need at least 1,000 of them all over the state. I mean, there's a lot of screwdrivers around, right?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely, there is. Boy, I've got a shed full of the things. Yeah. Oh boy, I shouldn't have said that. I'll be branded even more of a domestic terrorist now, John.
Just leave your machete at home, though. Leave your machete at home.
Indeed. Look, everything's shaping up for this big event on the 31st of August. Australians are going to be hitting the street en masse. That's pretty obvious. And Channel 7 did a story on it where they featured Beck Freedom. And very interesting article that they seem to indicate that the people were going to be coming out as an antidote to the pro-Palestinian rallies that blocked the Harbour Bridge. I think they're missing the point. This has got nothing to do with Palestine, Israel. This is all and it's got nothing to do with racism. This is about a country that needs to get its act together for the people who live here, who are being done out of housing. They can't get. For example, we've got a family friend in Perth, a young lady fly-out miner who had an apartment, very nice, kept it very nicely, and she was asked to leave and get out of the apartment because the apartment was being allocated for migrant housing at double the rent. Double the rent, and she couldn't afford to pay it. So these are the things. What we're seeing going to happen on the 31st of August, gentlemen, I want your opinion, I think is a reaction to the government that has been poking the bear for far too long. We're talking about a government that is failing to read the mood of the people, and it's going to be at their peril because this thing is going to be a runaway train in no time, and all the indicators are there. People will be going. All this talk about it being infiltrated and everything. I think there's going to be far too many people to worry about the infiltrators. I think they're going to be very heavily watered down by the number of real Aussies there doing their thing. And so it's got all the makings of being bigger than Ben-Hur. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Initially, I thought, yes, I want to go on this, but then, like you said, there was a lot of talk about being infiltrated, Nazis, and all that stuff. And no one seemed to know who'd organising it or why it was being done. So I got a bit twitchy about all that. I do think there's going to be a lot of people there who haven't been on any marches before, who went on the freedom stuff and won't know anybody in the freedom groups, which is a good thing that they're actually out there wanting to change themselves. So I think it's a step in the right direction. But I also think it's going to get twisted. Obviously, think about the way it was portrayed on the if Channel 7's talking about it, it's not going to be good, right? They're not going to be talking about it in a good way. It's like the Four Corners a few weeks ago, which was about people like us, right? It was about freedom fighters and sovereign citizens and all that, saying we're clogging up the courts and the council chambers. Of course, it was a hatchet piece. To make us look like crazies, as it always is. So the fact they're already talking about this match, so they must be a bit worried because they're giving it some time on the TV, but it's not going to be positive what they're saying. So I'm actually really interested to see what happens. If there's any violence at all or anything, like they're going to just ramp that up and really push that angle of it. But you're right, I don't think it's in response to the Palestinian thing, which again is quite weird, the fact that they're allowed, people on that march are allowed to burn our flag and nothing happens. And we can't put up an Australian flag, which is quite bizarre if you think about it, because then we're classed as far right if you like Australia. When did that happen? I thought that was a good thing if you like your own country, but apparently not. We're in a weird times. It's still a wacky world. And everything that used to be up is now down. So you can't even tell people you like Australia anymore. It's quite weird how you've got to be careful.
Got to be careful, John.
Well, that's true, Hoodie. I think ultimately people are just sick to death of what's going on, and I agree with George. I'm not certain that it's got anything to do with outside influences, overseas stuff happening. I mean, I think that it carries through in places, and look, you're never going to stop that, but. Ultimately, people just want to see the world restored to a balance where people are good people and doing the right things, and we don't have any of this death and destruction unnecessarily, which we're seeing. Uh, and then you look at Australia. I mean, we're losing our identity. With the very fabric of this country has been flushed down the toilet. I mean, you're waiting 2.5 hours for an ambulance in Wagga on a football field with a broken leg. Uh, Last week, the Rural Fire Service was attending mental health emergencies because there was no ambulance for 40 minutes. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that's going on day to day. People can't get their hips replaced. That's what they're concerned about. That's what they're really upset about. They're worried they can't turn the heater on because they can't afford the bill. And they're sick to death of people coming here and not assimilating in this country and not putting in and not having a go and just taking this country and its people for granted. And they're the sort of people like Donald Trump is doing in the US. They're saying, out, you're gone. Round them up and pee off. We've had enough. And I think that's where we're at. This COVID legacy, this COVID hangover, and all this other nonsense that we've been stuck with. I mean, look at Albanese. He's just paid $900,000 apparently to upgrade the Greens room in Parliament House, and the Australian newspaper took a couple of photos of it. And now the journalist and the Australian newspaper has been banned by Albanese from attending Parliament House for a week because they put these photos out. I mean, this country is completely bloody mad, and we've been run by psychos.
I don't think I can add to that. Yeah, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it.
It's great. And what's weird is, like, think of America, what's happening there. Just think of the backlash to actually getting rid of criminals who were illegals. Normally in a sane world, you'd be like, well, that's great. We don't want these guys coming from another country who murder and pillage here, living. We want to get rid of them, but people are fighting tooth and nail to keep them in the country. I mean, what parallel universe is that from? I cannot ever remember anything. I thought every decent person wanted less crime, better living conditions, all that. But over there, they are fighting tooth and nail for the opposite. And I'm like, when? How?
Well, look here. I mean, average Australians have been put through hell to get basic rights like an aviation security card, like myself. I mean, it took months for me to get it. And I mean, I'm a law-abiding citizen, but the federal government in Albanese just let all these criminals loose. Didn't even put them on what? There was rapists, murderers, just from other countries. Oh, off you go. Oh, they won't reoffend. Of course they won't. I mean, fair income.
I think the big thing for me that really stands out, and it really stands out like the proverbials, is the fact that hardworking Australians are sleeping in their cars and tents in council reserves because they cannot, afford to rent a place to stay. And even if they could, the chances of them getting it are so slim because people are outbidding each other to pay higher and higher rents for houses. When you've got volunteers like Daniel Cinzio and people like that in Brisbane who are driving trucks around at their own expense, delivering goods and chattels and food to people sleeping in their cars, when we've got a situation where child protection is going round to these reserves and taking people's children away from them, adding to the trauma because they can't afford to rent or cannot find a rental even if they could, and we're bringing in how many 1,500 people a day? 1,500 people a day. That is an absolute shocker. And the thing is, if you're gonna have immigration in this country, have the infrastructure to support it. There aren't enough jobs. People are struggling to put bread on the table. They can't afford electricity. And who knows what's going to happen to the price of fuel soon with everything going on crazy in the world at the moment. And that's why people have had enough. And you know what? Those people who are asking me, are you going to go or am I going to go, whatever, you guys have to do what you think is right in your heart to do. And you don't need us to tell you what to do. I think it's great that you're not going to have the usual voices at the rallies. If that's going to be the case, I think it's great because you people who are watching this, we're just giving you information. What you do with that's up to you. But for goodness sake, if you're going to do something, do it, and do it for all the right reasons, and make sure you keep it nice. Don't give the mainstream media anything to put a label on you, and do everything you can to make sure that this is compassionately and properly and respectfully staged, and you will win the hearts of a lot more people. And that's what we've got to do, George. We've got to get a tipping point in Australia where more and more people are waking up, and we don't do that by being ratbags.
That's right. Yeah. Look, shouting and screaming will only get you so far. And the other side are really good at doing that. They just think you shout loudest, longest, and be the angriest, and you're going to win. And we've kind of got to get above that, got to play above that. Because sometimes when I was doing the pharmacy thing before, I'd heard stories of some people going in and actually shouting at the pharmacist and getting really angry. So that's not a good look. So when I go in, I just smile and I'm very pleasant. And there's absolutely no point at where I will raise my voice or anything. So that's the way you do it. You've just got to do it. And also a lot of times you've got to do things with a laugh. You've got to smile and laugh and wave while they're ranting and raving. So I think that works better than actually shouting back. You know what I mean?
Okay, so let's talk about this. You're being called the pharmacy whisperer. I don't know whether that's been put a label that's been put on you or whether we've come up with that here.
I think Mike Gigi originally came up with that. Which I thought was quite good.
Yeah, so that is really good. So tell us your approach. You go into a pharmacy and you do what?
Okay, so this has actually evolved. I'll put my C&D project hat on, literally. So it's called the C&D project, cease and desist, right? So that's just the for Sarah. I believe you met Sarah about 6 months ago. It's her brainchild, the going into pharmacies from South Australia.
Yeah.
Look, it's evolved. Originally, some of us would just go, there's about 85 people signed up, maybe more now around the country who are doing the same thing. I think there's 4 of us doing the bulk of the work, but I think there's around 100 people all over Australia doing it or signed up to want to be part of it. So originally what we were doing was we were just going into pharmacies, filming them and just talking to them, like saying, are you still doing the jabs and why are you doing it? You're going to get, you're going to be liable if something happens. So that was the first kind of phase of it. Then Sarah came up with the idea of giving the cease and desists out. So basically the idea behind that is you'd go into a pharmacy, again, approach the pharmacist and say, look, do you realize you're going to be liable if someone dies or gets sick? So my approach to that is I go in and I'll say and I'll start by saying, are you aware? And usually they'll say yes or no, whatever. And then you continue the conversation from there. Now, the thing is, I let them know straight up front that I'm doing them a favor. I say to them, look, I don't want you to get into trouble. I actually want them to go to prison, but if I don't tell them that, of course, because that could get the backs up. So I say, look, I'm doing you a favor. I don't want you to get into trouble. But if you keep doing this, this is what's going to happen. And this is why. And I showed them the cease and desist. And I said, you're going to get into trouble because no one's given informed consent. No one. Because you have to tell them about all the adverse events. And we've now got a sheet which has got the 1,265 Pfizer adverse events, which we've been giving out as well as the cease and desist. And I show them that, and a lot of them haven't seen it. I said, look, you probably haven't seen this, but this is on Pfizer's website. So there you go. So that was my approach. So that was kind of the second phase. And I visited like 130 pharmacies and gave out, I think it was 72 cease and desists. And the other pharmacists weren't doing it anymore. So a lot of them at that stage, it was like a 60-40 split. And this is over the last year I've been doing it. And the 40% don't get too excited. They're not doing it because they've suddenly grown a conscience. They're not doing it because there was no money in it. A lot of the chemist warehouses, they weren't doing it anymore because people were not doing the boosters, which is great, right? Which is a win, of course, it's for us. So I think the uptake of the boosters were like 5% or something ridiculous. So the ones that were still doing it, I had some interesting conversations, and one of the best ones was Top Ride. There's about 4 pharmacies in Top Ride in Sydney, Top Ride Centre, and I'd been to a few of them and doing the video thing, and I tried to get into the bottom one and give them a cease and desist. And I tried 2 or 3 times. I'd rung up and said, "Oh, the pharmacist isn't in today. They just come on a Monday, whatever." So I went back in. It's not here. They'll be here at 2 o'clock. I said, right. So I went back again, and I'm standing at the front, and they said, yeah, someone will be with you in a minute. And I'm like, okay, great. So I'm standing there, and the lady walks past me and goes out, the one who'd said, we'll be with you in a minute. And I'm looking at all the pharmacists, and they're all busy, right? They're all very busy. And I really don't like going into places when they're busy. I like it to be quiet so I can just say, do my thing and then leave. So I'm standing there, and I'm getting a bit more nervous. And it seems to be taking a while, right? And I'm just thinking, oh, they must be really busy. The same lady comes back in across me and says, they'll be with you in a minute. I says, all right, great. So then 2 minutes later, this woman slinks in next to me with a guy behind her, and it's the manager with security. I'm obviously too trusting a person. They kept me stalling me while they got security, right? So then the woman says, I'm the manager, and we want you to leave now. And I said, oh, why? What have I done? I ain't done anything wrong. Oh, well, you're causing a disturbance. I said, I don't know how. I just want to give this to one of the pharmacists. It's just a piece of information. And she says, no, we want you to leave now. And by the way, she says, you were upstairs a few weeks ago, and you were filming one of our other pharmacists without their permission. And I said, no, I wasn't. And she said, I don't believe you. I said, I don't care. She said, well, I want you to wipe that interview. I want you to wipe that off your phone that you've got. I said, it's not on my phone. She said, give me a phone. I want to have a look at it, and I'm going to wipe it. I said, no, I'm not going to give you my phone. So she looks at the security guy and says, can we make him give us the phone? And he says, no. And then he says, if you want to take it further with the police, you've got to get his details. So she says, give me your details. And I said, no. And so she says to the guy, can we get his? No, he says to her, you can't get anything off him. If he refuses, that's it. So she says, right, we want you to leave now, and you're banned forever. And I went, oh, that's terrible. I was distraught when she said I'm banned forever from that chemist. I thought, oh my God, what's he coming to? I could never come back in here. So I'm walking out with the guard, and I said to him, I said, look, it's not your fault, mate. No problem. It's cool. It's cool. So we go outside, and he says to me, what's all that about? And I explained it, and he said, oh, yeah, look, they're stupid. They can't ask for anything off you if you don't want to give it to them. And he said, and you weren't doing it wrong anyway. I said, well, I know. And that was it. But that's how bizarre that was, that they were saying, give me this and give me that, and you can't come in here. But look, that was part of it. So if you're worried about rejection, don't be doing what I do, because you're going to get a lot of it, and you're going to get a lot of hostility, right? And I'm like, hey, that's cool. Just I'm doing my thing, and I'm off. And when I first started doing it, I used to get quite nervous, to go into places. But now I'm like, I just walk in and say what I need to say and get out. But now we're in stage 3. It's changed. What I'm doing now is, since the new government directive came out, where it's now too dangerous to give the poison shot to children under 18, right? It's too dangerous. And it says on the directive, children were never in danger, right? So now I go around to the pharmacists who I've given a cease and desist to over the last year, and I show them this new directive. So first I ask if they're actually still doing children, right? And a lot of them are, because they don't know about it, because the government hasn't actually bothered to tell them, because they don't want them to stop. So they've put it on the website, and it's up to them to go look, right? But the crazy thing about that is, what I do is I go in and I say, are you still vaccinating children with COVID? And they say, yes or no. And if they say yes, I say, well, this is the new directive. Do you know this? And I show it to them. And I say, look, it says children under 18 shouldn't be getting it, too dangerous, and children never been in danger. And I say, keep that. And some of them say, and I say, are you going to do it anymore? They said, no, we're not. I said, well, that's good. Some of them do that. But here's the crazy thing about that. They're not supposed to give under 18-year-olds, if they're healthy, they're not supposed to give them the COVID boosters, right? But if they're sick, fill your boots. You can give them as much as they want of the boosters. And I say to some of them, I go and I say, but that's insane. I say, that doesn't make any sense. You're saying if you're healthy, it's too dangerous. But if you've already got issues, you can have it. And I'm like, and one guy, I saw him, I went into this pharmacy in Linfield. He was a really nice guy. And I met him before, and he seemed like he'd listened and read the stuff. And I went in and he said, look, look. And he went through this about, look, if they're autoimmune suppressed, we can still give them it. And I said, but no. I said, it doesn't make sense. Don't you see that? I said, oh, sorry, I've not explained it right. So he said the same thing again in a different way. And I said, but that's just insane. And I walked out. But I tell you, it is, and actually these 72 I went back to, I did it in 3 weeks because I thought, I'm on a mission. I've got to get this out there. They've got to stop giving it to kids. They've just got to stop doing it.
Yeah.
So that's why we do it. We've just got to, we want it to stop.
Mm.
Well, I can tell you, George, I've spoken to a guy who went into a pharmacy in Coffs Harbour, and he walked up to the pharmacist and said, I'm just checking, is it still possible for me to bring my 14-year-old son in to receive a COVID booster? And I said, yeah, you can just bring him in at any time, we can do it. And he said, oh, really? And the pharmacist said, yeah, I'm surprised. And he said, why is that? He said, well, I've got a copy of the vaccine handbook here, and look, it says that. He said, I'm surprised you're still able to do it because the vaccine handbook says no. The pharmacist looked at it and said, crap, when did that come out?
Yeah, that's right.
And said straight up, oh no, we're not going to be doing any kids, and they had no idea. And you know, that is a great tactic. That's not confronting anybody. You know, that's just. It's just such a simple way to get the message across, because a lot of these pharmacists and doctors are too busy to read all the garbage that comes out of health, and they're not up to speed with it. Great tactic, John. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's working, Hoodie. There's no doubt about it. I mean, George has gone into 70 of them, but we don't know how many other people have seen what George is doing and just casually done what your friend did in Coffs Harbour. I mean, these are the small wins, but I suppose that the real question for me is why are these pharmacies and pharmacists unaware that they're actually going against the TGA's guidelines? How is it that this stuff was freely communicated by Gladys Berejiklian and every other premier at a conference every day at 11 o'clock? Get the booster, get the booster. This is what it does. Every chief health officer was out. But now, I mean, here they are saying the stuff's dangerous, and it's not approved for kids. It's not recommended, but nobody knows. They haven't communicated it, and I think that's the real issue.
I think, look, I think there's a reason for that. Do you remember, like you say, when they wanted everybody to take it, right? There were ads on TV, there were the conferences, there were emails to all the pharmacists all the time because everybody's got to get it. But once they're scaling back or dropping stuff, it's very quiet. It's like everything that all the narrative is front page news. It's the story on the news. It's big letters at the front. When it's changed or cancelled, it's page 15 in the Telegraph, and it's that big and it's quiet. It's everybody's whispering. No one's shouting it because they want you to think it's still okay to do it. It's like, I don't know if you remember that far back, but when we had, it was one of the times we were stopping the masks allegedly. And every month you'd have to look it up in the New South Wales Health as to where there were no more masks going on. And it finished, I think, in October or something, and people were still wearing them till November. And I'm like, but they're not doing it anymore. But no one knew because they didn't get told. So the idea is they wanted people to start doing it themselves. So it's the same with the pharmacists, and it's very haphazard with the pharmacists. Like some of them know, some of them are still doing 12 to 18-year-olds. And they're like, and I'm said, and when I asked how old, I say 15, and most of them say, "Oh yeah, we can still do it." I said, "Well, no, it's not supposed to be. It's like it's too dangerous." And there was one guy that just takes the cake, and he was in Linfield. I went in and I said the same thing to you, I've just said. And the lady behind the counter says, "Oh, I'm not sure." And he says, "Oh yes, look." He says, I'm only laughing because I know what's coming. He says, if they're under 18, no boosters, but we can give them the original 2 doses. I'm like, okay. And then he says, once they're over 18, they get 1 booster, and that lasts them till they're 30. And I'm like, oh, what? Really? And then he says, and then it's 1 a year from then on. And I'm said, really? Is that right? And he says, yeah. And I said, well, thank you. Have a great day. And I walked out. I'm like, what the hell? And this guy was the main guy. And I'm like, what is wrong with these people?
They don't even know what they're saying.
Well, I think unfortunately a lot of it is driven by dollars. This is a cash cow. I mean, there's always been a struggle between GPs and pharmacists about delivering services. I mean, these pharmacists would have thought, oh, they've won the lottery when they were given permission to actually start injecting people at the pharmacy and bypassing the doctor, because it's a magnificent way for them to boost their revenue. So it's in their interest, and this is the problem. I mean, I got told not so long back that even the primary healthcare network, which is like a subsidiary arm of the Commonwealth government, they were giving out a couple of $1,000 to any pharmacy to put up a COVID booster. $2,000 just to put the poster up. So you can't look beyond that. And I mean, it's the same with the shingle shot. I mean, these GPs are fighting over themselves at nursing homes to give these injections out to residents, not because they, in my opinion, believe that they're doing a good thing. It's because there's hundreds of dollars in it for the doctor.
Yep. And one thing that we're trying to do on the cease and desist project now, I've got 10 lined up to go and visit this week. I've got to find new ones. I've got to go further afield, right? I've done all the suburbs within like 40 minutes of me, so I've got to go further afield. But one thing that Sarah's trying to do now, the next stage, is she's trying to get into nursing homes, because it's a bigger bang for your buck, right? Where you go in and you get onto the manager, show him all the data, and get them to sign something to say they're not going to do it anymore. So she's working on that, where anything where you can get to a lot of people in a quick hit. That's what she's working on. But the trouble with the nursing homes is the staff there don't actually do it, because I think they get outside. Like there's a couple of nurses will come from a health centre or something and come and do all the that's right, and do all the inmates.
And so I'll tell you what goes on, because I know what goes on. They'll come in, and the doctors will come in on a Sunday, because they can bill Medicare the most, and they come in there and there'll be one doctor, one GP likely sees the bulk of the patients in these facilities, because the doctors are too busy to come down there, and so there'll be 1 or 2 practice doctors that'll come in, and they'll go around and they'll do a round on a Sunday or a Saturday, and they'll see these patients and they'll make minor adjustments to medications. 99 times out of 100 don't even need doing. And they'll then, that's a long consultation. Bang, there's money, and we give them a shot.
Yeah.
This is what goes on. I mean, these healthcare facilities, nursing homes, they're being run as coronary care units. You're not allowed to go in there and enjoy the last years of your life comfortably. I mean, they want you to go in there and be like an experimental pincushion. There is just no reason for any of this. These elderly patients that they're often in there because their quality of life at home is so poor that they need assistance, and they need care. But why do we send them to hospital every time they fall for a CT scan? I mean, no neurosurgeon's going to operate on a 100-year-old person. So why send them up to the hospital? And they've got dementia, they're out of their environment, they're scared, they don't want to be there, they don't know where they are. Hospital staff end up being tied up looking after combative dementia patients when they should be in their own environment. People should be allowed to live comfortably in their nursing homes without being, made guinea pigs for the health system.
Mm.
Absolutely, and I want to go back to that. Why isn't the government publicising, making more of an issue out of the change to the immunisation handbook? And I think one of the big reasons is if they come out and make that broadly known, a lot of people are going to say, "What? You were forcing us to get our kids vaccinated. You said it was safe and effective. Now you're saying it's not. What's going on?" This is all CYA. Cover your ass. That's that's a predominant thing. That's what they're doing. And once again, we've said it a million times. While they're playing this CYA game, we're not getting remedy to fix people up from the side effects of these vaccines, and people are dying. I'm doing a lot of stuff with Professor Ian Brighthope. We've got a little thing called Health Chats that we do once a week, and the number of letters we're getting from people wanting to know how to treat their younger children, like 18, 20, who've had this rapid onset cancer. Yeah. They're all getting cancer, leukemia, and all sorts of other things, and brain tumors, and this is just unheard of at this level.
Yeah.
But because the government's, all the doctors are saying, well, we can't work out why it's happening. Oh, it might be the vaccine. Oh no, it's not the vaccine. We know it's not the vaccine. We don't know what it is. Whatever that's happening, the research that's needed to repair the damage that's been done by this con is not getting done, and people are dying. I mean, that's where people are held to account.
Yeah. Look, I've got some stories about the cancer, which it's just prevalent. It's like everywhere now. Excuse me. But first, I was going to tell you something. Oh, yeah, the thing about why the government's not shouting it from the rooftops about children, to me, the most important thing in that whole document is the bit where it says, excuse me, children were never in danger. That to me is like, oh my God, if everybody knew that, you would think there'd be an outcry. You would think that. I mean, from what we've seen, probably not. They'll go, oh, really? Oh, but that was massive at the time. Remember, your child is going to kill next door's granny because they've got to get the shot. And all the schools were closed because it was dangerous. But kids never got sick from COVID. And we knew that at the time. But they were all forced to get it. Otherwise, can't go to play school, can't go to the dance and all that. I mean, that's the thing I think they're trying to really keep quiet, that they were never in danger. I don't know how you backtrack from that. Probably, oh, well, now we've seen the studies over 5 years here where thousands have died. And now you can say, oh, yeah, now we've worked it out. But cancers, look, Hoody, first of all, this is actually will be interesting to you, very poignant. This is my next door neighbor, right? I've seen the guy a couple of times on the street, said hello, lived just across from me. One day I stopped, we're having a chat, and he says, I used to be a pilot for Qantas. He said, yeah, I'm retired about 8 years. I said, oh, well, have you heard of Graham Hood? And he said, yes, I have. It's a name I haven't heard in a long time. I said, okay. And the reason I brought you up, excuse me, I'm laughing too much. The reason I brought you up is he said to me, I said to him, who's that young man I see sometimes coming out of your house? He's got a limp and he drives a very nice car. And he said, oh, that's my son. He said he's got all these really terrible things wrong with him. And he says, and we know it's a vaccine injury. And my ears pricked up then, right? Because you don't say anything to people until you get a feel for where they're at. So, and you certainly don't start talking about stuff like that. And he says, yeah, vaccine injury, really terrible. And I've met Ash since then, his son, and it's just, you won't believe, he's got things that no one's ever seen before, loads of stuff. And his life is lying on the couch watching TV now, and he's only 42, right? And he was made to get the jab by his ex-wife, who said, I'm not going to let you see the kids. And I hear in that a lot, right? So then he got sick, and he knows, and he's got like 7 different specialists. He's had loads of surgeries. Nothing's working. I've recently just given him some DMSO, which has got great raps, and he's using that a little bit, and that is doing something for him, right? He knows about ivermectin and everything else. So he's very cluey. And then the father says to me, oh, my wife, she had 5 shots and she had cancer. And it was terminal. They gave her 6 months. I'm like, oh my God. And because the doctors kept telling her to get the shots, right? So she got 5. Then she was given 6 months or something to live. So she went to see the guy who was Australian of the Year, whose name I can't remember, but he's done a lot of good work with motor neuron disease, right? He used to be a soccer player or an AFL player or something. And he's got Australian of the Year. So she went to see him and he's got a protocol. Obviously, there's a crossover point with the drugs. There must be. They're repurposed. As are other drugs, like a certain horse paste, can be repurposed. So she used his protocol, which included the drugs he's using and chemo and radiotherapy, did all that. After she finished the protocol, she's sitting in the waiting room. 3 doctors came in and they were crying. And she said, what is it? They said, you are completely clear. You have no more cancer. It's gone. So I'm like, oh my God. And that's what she was saying. Oh my God. So she's had another lease of life, but the jab did it and she knows it. And just one more thing about that. A lady rang me about a month ago, said she wanted to come to my self-defense classes. And I said, fine, yeah, come along. I told her when it was. I texted her to remind her when it was on. And she said, oh, look, I've had some bad news. I'm sorry, I can't come. I've just been told I've got lymphoma, cancer. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. She said, yeah, it's kind of out of nowhere. I haven't been sick. I've been fine. I said, all right. I said, look, if you feel well, still come to the classes because it's a health system as well as a self-defense. So you should be all right. Anyway, she rings me the next week. She said, look, the news is even worse. She said, I'm told I've got stage 3 straight. And this woman's, I think, in her 30s. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I said, let's get together and have a coffee. I'll talk to you. So we got together and I wanted to just ask her about other health issues before I said, because I wanted to give her some hope at least, right? So she's telling me, oh, they said maybe it's my vaping and maybe these other things why I've got the cancer. And she says, I know it's not. And I says, well, and what about stress? She said she's had a couple of years where she was really stressed, but this year's been better. Obviously not now. And I said, you know, I'm hearing this a lot from people. And how many, can I ask you if you've had how many injections? She said, yeah, I got 3 because I was in the beauty industry, beauty therapist. And she said, I had to get that. And she said, and you know, me and my partner were wondering whether it was that. I said, well, in my experience, I would say it probably is. And she said, and she knows about ivermectin. She mentioned it to the GP and they went, nah. Nah, that won't do any good. No, it might make you feel a bit better. No good. Don't worry about that. And then this is the best bit. When she's on the phone to her GP, who she's been with for a long time, who's given her this earth-shattering news that she's stage 3 from nothing, then her GP, who she's always gotten really well with, oh, look, I think you'd be really good to be in our vaccine trials at the moment. Do you want to do it? I'm like, what? And she says, exactly. She said, I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And the woman says to her, oh, it's okay. Don't decide now. Let us know. She said, can I think about it? She said, yeah. And her partner says to her, do you want to do it? And she says, no. She said, well, tell them you don't want to do it. But I thought, talk about kicking someone when they're down. So I'm having a coffee with this lady. And I said, look, you're going to be all right. She was going to start chemo once a week for a long time and then be on drugs forever. And I said, look, there's always something you can do. You're going to be okay. Here's a few thoughts and things to look at. So I told her about ivermectin and fenbendazole, how it's had fantastic results. I told her to look up Dr. William Mackis. He's the guy that's had the results. I said, but don't Google him because he'll say he's a quack, right? But so look him up somewhere else. And I told her about the Australian of the Year guy. I said, look into that. I told her about infrared light healing and fasting, which I do. I have a business called Infrared Light Healing where I hire out the boxes. But I was going to say to her, if you can do this, I'm just going to give you a box. I don't want any money. Just use it. So I think she felt a bit better after our talk, because I think sometimes you just want to be able to talk to people, don't you? Right. And so when I said to her, you're going to be okay. Anyway, I put a thing together for her cancer team. I spoke to her after her first chemo, and she said, I feel terrible. I just feel so weird. I can't do anything. I've cooked dinner. I've got to go to bed now and lie down. And I said, look, ask your team about the infrared light. What I'll do is, and I'll put some things together where you could ask the team about questions about whether you could use it with radiotherapy on a chemo patient. And I said, and this is a protocol, how you can use it for chemo. So she gave it to them. She came back to me. She said, look, one of the first doctors said, no, you can't use it. But the top guy said, yes, go for it. The way you want to use it is great. And I thought, look, if it just makes her feel a bit better on a daily basis, it's good. So I just dropped her off to her a couple of days later and she's using it now. But that, and another good friend of mine's just got cancer from nowhere. So I'm like, you know what I mean? It's just scary. And it's coincidence, of course, coincidence.
I'd say that was it Neil Danaher, the Australian of the Year? He played AFL with.
Did it? Yeah, I'm not sure. I should know his name. And he did. He got it with a lady as well. There were two of them. But look, if you can get those sort of results, it's got to give people a chance, hasn't it? Because you want to have a chance, especially if you know it's the spicy juice and you've got to somehow get it out of your system. But the cancer thing, I'm hearing at the forest as well. We're hearing lots of that. But I did have a good result yesterday at the forest. We were at the Forest of the Fallen yesterday, and there were two pharmacists who turned up who were awake. I couldn't believe it.
Two pharmacists.
They said, we know. They said they looked at the forest and they said, I explained it, and they said, look, if it was the actual numbers, the beach would be all covered, wouldn't it? And the whole suburb. I said, I know, but we only put so many out here. But they were just beside themselves about people still doing kids and all that. And I'm like, but it was so refreshing to actually meet some pharmacists that were awake, because I don't see it much.
Yeah, well, we're going to be interviewing Anita Huffmeister and Rosemary Marshall a bit later in the day. So that'll be another one just to give us a wrap up of the Vax Bus tour.
Yeah, I've heard it was tough. I know Rosie will tell you she's struggling still with it because the stories were horrendous. We don't get the same impact at the forest because they're only short interviews. Like we'll talk to people for a minute or two and then they go, but it's still in your head and you've got to be able to separate the two. But if you're talking to people for hours on end, it's going to be hard to let go of that. It is. But it was interesting at the forest yesterday. One interesting thing was a lady came back who I'd seen maybe 3 months ago, and she her story was that she'd had to get the shots to be able to see her children. Remember, I said that was like a theme I'd heard a lot of, and she didn't want to do it. She did not want to do it, and she got really sick after getting the shots, but she did it for the kids, and she had two, and she didn't get any more. But one thing she insisted on with her ex-husband was the kids are not getting the COVID jab, but he wanted them to get flu. So she had to negotiate. I mean, can you believe it? She had to negotiate, but she says they are not getting the COVID shot. And she's so glad she didn't. Anyway, she came back yesterday and she said, do you remember me? I said, oh, yeah. So she came and she had the girls with her two daughters, and they're lovely little things. And she said, look, can you explain it to them? Because they were reading all the stories and stuff. And she said, can you explain it to them in a way that won't be scary, that they'll get an idea? And I said, I'll give it a go. So they came over. I said, hello, girls. And we were having a bit of a chat. I said, do you know what this is? And this, well, we're not sure. I said, well, these are people who took some medicine that they thought was going to help them, but it's made them sick. And some of them have passed away and all. So they kind of gave them an idea of what it was and they went away. But I'm like, I was so pleased to see that lady again, and she's actually okay now. But just that's the insidious part of all this, right? Where families have been not forced, but coerced into, brainwashed into forcing other family members to do something against the will that's then making them sick. And even the thing at Christmas when we got banned, I mean, that by someone on TV, bloody Kochi and Natalie Barr telling you to do it, and people jumped at it. That's what disturbed me. They jumped. They didn't need a long time to think about it. Oh, let's do it. Oh, I never wanted them to come anyway. Let's tell them they can't come.
So television I ever saw that whole thing on Christmas. That was disgusting.
I know. It was just crazy. And I used to say to people, and just think of it. And it goes back to the Palestinian thing on the bridge and everything. If I used to say to people, if you did what was done to us, if you did it to gay people, or you did it to black people, or you did it to people with disabilities, Sydney would be burning. Nobody would stand for that, right? It wouldn't be peaceful protest. You'd be burning buildings down. But because it was done to your family, to your friends, to your workmates, it's okay. It's okay. Oh, they must be dirty. They must be. But you know what I mean? That was how bizarre that was. But the insidious thing, it's still there. You know, people aren't going to forget how they were treated by family members, by workers. And even though mandates from a lot of jobs are gone now and people are able to come back, that's not going to sit well. And I don't know how many people would go back. Like, John, I don't know if you'd go back in a heartbeat. I don't know, you might, but if people, you know, everybody I worked with had just stood by and said, see ya, or called you stuff, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. What do you think, John? What would your thoughts be on that?
Oh, well, look, I think I would go back because look, I think they need to understand that you know they can't do it. You know, and ultimately, I mean, whether I lasted there a long time, I don't know, but I certainly would go back, just to demonstrate that, you know, they shouldn't be allowed to do that to people, and you know what they've done. I mean, the whole premise of what they've done. I mean, Dr. Kerry Chant gave evidence in a Supreme Court to say that transmission was the reason that essentially all these people were being sacked, and I mean, it was a lie.
Yeah.
So I don't know when you've got, you know, affidavits from the chief health officer, how they can't be now retested on those on those. It's ridiculous. The
Yeah.
police, we know the police. Look at all these police. They want to go back to work and they just won't let them. Yasmin Catley, the librarian police minister, she just doesn't want them to go back to work.
Right. What about the fireys in Victoria? They're still mandated, aren't they? I think the fireys.
No, they're back now.
Are they? Oh, good.
They had a win about 3 weeks ago, so
Oh,
they're all being reinstated. Thank God for that. But we've still got 50 odd paramedics in Queensland, police in New South Wales. This is not over by a long way.
No,
Not
and
over
you
by a
get
long
new
way.
people in having to do the jobs. So of course, you've lost all that experience and all that knowledge
Yeah.
and
And
everything else. And
integrity.
what have you replaced it with?
And the integrity.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, people who gave up their dream job out of integrity. I mean, you can't afford to lose that kind of integrity in an organisation. Anyhow,
Yep.
we better wrap this one up. George, it's been really, really great having you on. We should do this again. We should have a catch up.
Yeah, sure. Love it. Thank you for having me.
No, it's great to have you on, mate. And well done, all the effort you're doing. You're Forest to the Fallen. You're doing all this stuff at the pharmacies. Keep whispering to the pharmacists, mate.
I will, don't worry. And,
All
and I
right.
do my show on a Friday night. Mike GG calls that entertaining the troops. It's called The Wacky World of the Wokieverse on a Friday night at 6:00. So it just talks about the madness in the world and what is going on, and it just a take on it with a bit of humor.
Yeah, we can't take ourselves too seriously, you know. That's well worth it. So let's bring this to a close with a prayer and then closing comments. So, dear Father in heaven, we just want to thank you, Lord, that we're able to discuss these issues in a light-hearted but determined way, Father God, because people are waking up and governments will be held to account by the people, and it's inevitable that that's going to happen, Lord. And it is a very strange government indeed who can't see that happening. So, Lord, we just pray that you'll be with us all, that we'll be compassionate, caring about our fellow man, and regardless of their race, colour or creed, and that we will stand in the light of truth, because John 8:32 has told us clearly, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. So guide and lead us, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Johnny Lardy, you've often been heard to say,
You just couldn't make this stuff up.
you couldn't make this stuff up. And that's so true. Don't forget, Australia, what you did yesterday got you to today. Do it one day at a time. We'll be okay. Just got to stick together and keep loving on each other. So stay out of the trees, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, George, for being on Club Grubbery. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.